This video is brought to you by Raycon.
Oh, hey everybody. I was just about to go for a walk. I moved to Seattle. I'm a city boy now. I walk everywhere. And I never leave home without my Raycon everyday earbuds. They're so comfortable that it doesn't matter how far I walk. They feel perfect and they never fall out. And it's always raining in Seattle, am I right? But it doesn't matter. Raycons are water resistant and they last all day. Up to 8 hours on a charge and up to 32 hours using the charging case, which is perfect because I just got into Aphex Twin, and I'm really late to the party on Aphex Twin, and now I just want to be listening to Aphex Twin all day, every day. Raycons have got multiple sound profiles to choose from, and I can even take calls with them, all with the touch of a button. They're super easy to use. They come in lots of cool colors, and every pair comes with a bunch of silicone tips to make sure they fit your ears perfectly. They've got tens of thousands of 5-star reviews left by happy customers, and they come with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. The everyday earbuds are half the price of other premium brands. Plus, if you head to buyraycon.com/Arlo, you can get 20% off your order, plus free shipping. Now, if you'll excuse me, listening to Aphex Twin while walking in the rain is literally the best experience a person can have.
All the way across. Hello, my friends, how are you? So late last year, I did a video on how it kind of felt like the AAA bubble was finally starting to burst. You know, all year in 2023, it was report after report of these mass industry layoffs. All these huge AAA games were flopping horribly. Everyone's talking about how budgets are getting higher and higher, so these flops are hurting more and more. This is scaring off investors, leading to more layoffs and game cancellations and studio closures. As many have said, 2023 was an incredible year for games. So many amazing titles released, and yet it was a terrible year, a particularly bad year for the game industry. And the year was capped off by a particularly poor showing at the Game Awards. Despite all these closures and layoffs and whatnot, the show was jam-packed with samey, focus-tested, very expensive live service slop. And that drove me to make the video, because it just, I don't know, really just kind of feels like the industry is at this tipping point. But now, after that horrible 2023, 2024 is already worse. It's already worse. 2023 was an unprecedented year when it came to layoffs, and yet, like, that total number of layoffs, we surpassed that number almost immediately in 2024. We're so far past it now. We've already dwarfed it, and I'm not even gonna try to find what the official number is now, because by the time this video goes out, it will be outdated. And every single time one happens, every single time a giant company announces these just massive layoffs, we think, that's gotta be it, right? It's gotta end sometime. It has to end eventually, and yet it just kind of doesn't. It just doesn't. This batch of hundreds of people, I mean, we're talking like thousands and piled on thousands. You think that's gotta be it, but it just never is. I mean, like, even pretty recently, we had closures and mass layoffs from Sony and EA in like the same week. They were like a couple days off. There are multiple publications that are keeping track of all of these layoffs, and browsing them is a grim activity indeed. And one kind of funny, like sort of ha-ha funny and sort of depressing funny thing about all this is that, like, despite all of this really poor just really objectively poor management blowing up in these companies' faces, they are all learning the exact wrong lessons. They're taking away just the wrongest lessons from it. Warner Brothers, let's talk just for a moment. Let's just talk a little bit about Warner Brothers. They're such a good example. Right now, they're completely restructuring, firing people left and right. They're delisting dozens of games, like all the Adult Swim games. They're just like, just going away forever. But like, okay, some of their notable releases recently, you've got Harry Potter Hogwarts Legacy, which was a AAA single-player experience, and it sold a staggering 24 million units. All right, so you got that. You got single-player, 24 million units, and then on the other hand, you've got Justice League, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which was like sort of a single player game, but like they crammed in a bunch of like live service multiplayer stuff into it. And because they did that, it was very poorly received, and like we don't have official numbers. I don't think they're ever gonna give us official numbers because it's too embarrassing, but we have every reason to believe that that game is a dramatic flop, a monumental behemoth of a flop. So, how has Warner Brothers decided to move forward after these two game releases? More live service games. They said it. More live service games. That was their takeaway. It's baffling. It's not baffling. It's something far beyond baffling. It's like living in some kind of bizarro world where logic is meaningless. And other companies are making similar decisions. Sony had to cancel a bunch of their live service games, and like games are taking so long to make and they're taking so much money that like Sony just straight up said they're not giving us any more games for like over a year. They're just like, yeah, don't expect anything from us. And yet, they are also doubling down on live service games. They said it themselves. Nope, that's it. That's what we're focusing on. Live service games, despite everything. Despite the fact that they built an empire on AAA single player experiences. Bizarro. We're in Bizarro world, that's what I'm saying. So with all of this going on, many of us are wondering if we really are seeing some sort of significant destabilization in the game industry. You know, sometimes it feels like everything is just collapsing around us. In my other video, I did explore the idea of what a burst AAA bubble actually would look like, and you know, it's probably not a super dramatic kind of thing. Realistically, the game industry is not going to crash like the same way that it did in the 80s. It's just not really possible, especially with the indie scene absolutely thriving. Still, lots of companies making lots of great games. Like, games are not going anywhere. A burst bubble really would just mean fewer huge gaming corporations pumping billions of dollars into that aforementioned focus-tested slop, at least ideally. Fewer investors in the space, a overall less willingness to eagerly go after that bag, you know, which could be a good thing in its own way, except it would also mean more layoffs, more closures. But now with 2024 off to such a terrible start, when 2023 was already just like a record bad year for the industry, could it be that we actually are seeing something more unprecedented? Could it be that the industry really actually is in trouble? You know, like, is this just gonna keep going until like everyone is fired from every company and games are just done? There's just no more people left to make games? Well, the answer is probably still no. It's really difficult and painful to see all of these layoffs, especially when they just do not stop. And there have been a lot of just outright studio closures. But you gotta consider that the number of affected people still represents a relatively small percentage of the gaming industry workforce. Even if the layoffs continue, even if they continue all year and it ends up beating last year 5 times over, these companies are still gonna go on functioning. They're still gonna keep the lights on, especially the huge ones. You know, giant gaming corporation lays off 1,300 people, and it's like 3% of their workforce. One thing that I really didn't get into in my other video that much, even though I really wish that I had because it is really important, is a lot of this is because of the huge gaming boom of 2020. So many people were at home, they were buying games, so much money was going into the game industry that a lot of these companies started investing like crazy. They were pumping so much money into hiring people and opening studios and buying studios and starting projects and all that stuff that when things more or less went back to normal, now they are seeing that they have over-invested. They really just can't support all of these different projects. They hired more people than they needed, basically. And that is really important, but even beyond the whole pandemic thing, the industry is actually in a natural downtick of their own creation. And this is a new thing to me. There is a really terrific video on this subject over on Moon Channel where a lawyer breaks down a concept where the tech industry naturally operates on a boom and bust cycle. And I am not quite smart enough to like truly understand the whole thing perfectly, but basically the entire tech industry tries to hype up some new technology or service or set of products or anything. They attract loads and loads of investors, and they make lots of money, and they hire lots of people, and they make their business worth a lot of money, like on paper. But then things naturally die down, and then that's when they just start hacking away. You know, they fire people, they liquidate assets and all that stuff. It's a way to game the system, really, and it's a little bit risky, but it comes with lots of benefits if you get it right. You spend a lot when the hype is rising, and then you fire a lot when the hype is dropping. And the gaming industry follows the greater tech industry in many ways. A lot of the people running these companies basically just fancy themselves tech companies and kind of just imitate what's going on in the tech world. So that's what's happening here. The most recent hype cycle was 2020. That's when there was something to jump onto. And now we are seeing the natural decline after that hype cycle. It's all part of the cycle. And we actually have seen this happen before in the game industry. I think it just wasn't quite as dramatic before, and it probably wasn't like reported on quite as thoroughly. And because it is so dramatic this time, I really honestly do stand by the stuff that I said in my other video that I do think these companies have been investing too much. I think I mean, I'm not a professional, but it does feel like it goes beyond the simple hype cycle, the up and the down. It seems like it is too many companies really trying to get into that live service space. They are overspending. They are putting tons of money in these products that just end up flopping horribly. But it's totally true that the idea that everything we're seeing here is at least somewhat a natural part of the industry. It does make sense. It makes a lot of sense. And it does assure us that everything is actually going more or less according to plan and nothing is collapsing, which is, I mean, it's sort of good if you look at it in a certain light, but at the same time, it's not. It's not good at all. It's the sign of a very, very unhealthy industry run by very, very just poor man. It's just like, I don't want to go too deep into it, but like, I kind of just feel like you could focus, like in theory, like you could just focus on making good games. And that's the business model, you know? It's just like make good products. And so like they're good, so they sell well, you know? Like instead of hedging your bets on these ridiculous cycles of hype and gaming our broken economic system to generate insane amounts of cash at the expense of the countless people who get thrown in the trash can at the end of each cycle, how about you just try being good at your job, you know? And like, this isn't just a pipe dream, is the thing, you know? This isn't just me, a layman, not understanding how things work. Because some companies are just making good games. You know what I mean? Some of them are just kind of like, we just make good games. And you know what? It's really working out for them. Nintendo strictly does not do all of this boom and bust nonsense. They just don't do it. They just focus on making good products, and that's it. And like, they don't lay off their employees in humongous waves every few years just to make a couple extra bucks. They treat their employees well. They make sure that they're happy. They pay their employees well. The economy is rough, and everyone else is laying off people to save money, while Nintendo is like, hey, the economy's rough. You could all use pay raises. And those people who are treated well are really good at their jobs. They put out really, really good work. The turnover rate is really, really low. And Nintendo just kind of keeps on making games and selling them. And like, sure, you know, they've had some tumultuous times. You know, a poor console idea really can mess things up. But like, the Switch has seen them really focus on good games first and foremost. And now they are the most profitable company in Japan. Nintendo is living proof that yes, you can just do business the quote-unquote old-fashioned way of making products and selling them and still make lots of money. Your business can actually be stable and a nice place to work. You know, healthy, in other words. But as I always say, I believe that Nintendo is actually run by people who care about making games. These other companies, they're not. They're just, They're run by people who just want to game the system. That's why they do it the way that they do it. But let's leave all that where it is now, because I don't know, it all goes without saying at this point. Long story short, no, 2024 is not the year the game industry collapses. We probably will see a lot more layoffs and closures and cancellations and all that stuff, and it's going to continue being awful, being really, truly awful. It really stinks that these companies get to make all of these horrible decisions, chasing these unrealistic profits. And when things stop working, they can just save money by axing everyone and everything, just kill everything. And then the cycle continues ad nauseum. And yeah, it's depressing. Moral of the story is support indie games. Just buy indie games. Support indie. Also, I gotta say, like, I know this whole thing is so much more complicated. You can't just, like, you can't break it down into these super broad generalizations, but, like, I still can't help but feel like if you're a studio, try your best to not get bought. You know, like, I just, especially by Warner Brothers, just don't do it. Like, I get it. The promise of immediate money is really great, and maybe it seems like a good idea at the time. You've got, like, the people who are talking to you about it. They've all got great ideas. It's all gonna be great, but, like, just don't. Just don't. Even if it starts good, it's not gonna be good later. Like, after all this, who is ever gonna let Warner Brothers buy them? Like, ever. How does anyone let anyone buy them? I don't get it. Like, back when EA just went on this crazy spree of buying up studios, ruining their game series, and then closing them down. Just like, I don't even know how many they did that to, but like, after that point, I thought like, oh, surely we've learned our lesson, right? Don't let a big gaming corporation buy your company. You will owe everything to them. They will own everything that you do, and at any time they can just fire you and close you down and destroy all of your work and delist all the games you've ever made. I kind of just thought like we learned that lesson, but now we're just seeing it all over again. And I know it's more complicated than that. It's kind of a case-by-case basis, I guess, but like, I don't know, just like stay indie. Just stay indie. In such a horribly unhealthy industry, the way to fight it is just to be indie, support indie, buy indie. It's all about the indie. And you know what? The same goes for YouTubers and stuff. Not even just games. Rooster Teeth just shut down just like that after like 20 years. This was like real people content, you know? This is like YouTube. It's like, it's supposed to just be regular people like you and me making content. But now it's all gone because they weren't owned by regular people. They were actually owned by, oh, look at that, Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers deleted their new Looney Tunes movie. I'm mad about that too. Okay. Let's wrap this up. Actually, I guess that's it. See you later.